Just get started and say that, you know, town team baseball was the thing. Baseball was America's pastime. And so it was a Sunday tradition in all these communities. And town folks looked forward to ball games on Sunday afternoon as a way of relaxing and enjoying themselves with their friends. And so competition was always against clubs that were commonly weekly events. And it was very popular in the late 19th and 20th centuries. Town teams provided entertainment and also gave locals a chance to socialize with their neighbors. Plus, a successful team also boosts the image of their town. Games were always well attended with family and friends. Fans also supported the team in every way they could, whether they would fix the ball diamond, line the fields, cut the grass, and they had all kinds of ways of portraying the ball diamonds back then, and I'm going to talk about some of that as well. But we want to talk about the war years, 1919, before and after, and World War II, about how these teams they were dissolved for a while until after the war. So this is a team from the Bem area. The Bem area is between here, if you leave, not here, excuse me, from Owensville, if you go down Highway 19 toward Crawford County to Cuba, you go to the community of Bem. And the Bem boys played under the Dry Fork Tigers. I didn't know such a team existed. And so, but I got these photos, and this next one, there's another one. They didn't have uniforms, they weren't fancy. They probably had a Sunday white shirt on, and a couple of them had bib overalls, and that's how they played. Then here's another team I never knew about, and all the years I did research for the Advertiser Courier and for a column, I compiled old stories about things that happened in our area for a column called Remember When. And I did not know that Little Berger had a ball team until several weeks ago. But they had really nice looking uniforms, and we had one of those uniforms back there from Marion Kramer, who now is in Cape Girardeau. And on the left there is her father, George Schlemeyer, and on the right is Bill Deppy, who lived on Highway 19. That's part of the Little Birch area, near the Herman Rod and Gun Club now. It was called Sharpshooters back in those days. And here, the thing about Owensville, there was a lot of years that Owensville did not have a town team. What they did, Rosebud had a pipeline to Owensville. It's only like 7 miles, and the Owensville boys and men went down to Rosebud to play. But here's a team we found in a Gasconade County history book. It's very early 1900, and it's the Grays, the Owensville Grays. Those are pretty cool uniforms, I think. And but we did find out a lot about Owensville. We talked to guys from Owensville who played at Rosebud. They played at Mount Sterling and places like that. They probably even played here a day for the Bay teams. Here's one of the early Morrison teams. Played at different places. They talked about Myers Grove. I understand if you've been to Morrison, there's an old historic house there. It's probably maybe the oldest one in Gasconade County, called the Morrison House. And there was a ball field there. So they played ball down there. And it was funny how very informal and unorganized some of these teams were. They might have gathered this team the day before, and what it says here that the Morrison baseball team played and defeated a Bottom Boys team. And I'm gathering from what I read that the Bottom Boys were just a bunch of pickups, that they gathered themselves and say, okay, we're going to play Morrison Sunday afternoon. And these were just a bunch of guys who weren't on the Morrison team, but they had enough players to put another team together down at the bottoms. And so they call themselves the Bottom Boys. Can you guys all read that? Okay? Then I got some things in there about World War I. There was quite a bit of baseball going back even to 1800s, 1892, 1894. I did not find anything, and I don't know why, in the Herman paper what I was looking, or the Bland papers, about 1893. That year, kind of there's a void there. I didn't find any stories about baseball. There's a lot of snippets in those Owensville and Bland papers and the Herman paper about teams like at, Morrison. There'd be a paragraph about those teams having a baseball game, and maybe just a paragraph about their last week's game, and those little columns that their correspondents wrote. They might just have one paragraph about Morrison defeated Bland 3-2 or something like that. So Herman baseball organized, can I read that? August 6, 1919, after World War I. That's the first time I saw a story on the Herman team playing after World War I. The Pershing Polecats. I knew Pershing had a team. I didn't know they were called the Polecats. I think that's really unique. That's very unique for a nickname or a team name. Now, Pershing and Fredericksburg are very close. And I know we have some players who played on both. Melvin Buell was one of those. Melvin also played in Herman, and maybe for some other teams. He was very good. And we're going to tell a story about him after a while. You guys see Jim Hill, the winery owner, Stonehill Winery. He started the old Stonehill Wine Company back up in the mid to late 60s. He played baseball. He said he wasn't very good, but he and his brother had to get there early. Because they played in the cow pasture down at Lime Cure's place. It was a pasture, and they'd bring corn scoops and shovels, and they'd have to clean up the cow piles before the game. He said they didn't always get them all. And if a ball rolled to the outfield grass and went through a cow pile, they just wipe it off and throw it back into play. They kept using it. They didn't have a lot of balls. They didn't have a lot of money. They started a game maybe with 2 balls, and by the end of the game, those balls were pretty brown. So I thought that was really interesting. Jim really came to life when I called him and asked him about baseball teams, and I was given his name. And this is why this was so interesting for me, because a lot of this stuff came back to me, and I knew some of it because I had researched so much during my 25 years in Herman at the Advertiser Courier, when I was researching material and compiling that Remember When column that I did for 20-some years. So I thought that was really interesting, and they had a good time. But the Rosebud V8s. The Rosebud team, the Rosebud V8s and the Bay Bears were 2 of the teams that I have personally played with, or against, rather, not with, but against, and goes back to when I was, Bay goes back to when I was about 6 years old, and we came out and I was a bat boy. Rosebud, I was a bat boy out there also, and I also played at Rosebud in the late 1950s. Would be about 59. But like I said earlier, Rosebud got a lot of players out of Owensville, and they did for years. And one of the guys who played down there, later I played with in Herman, when the old Herman Cardinals kind of disbanded because they couldn't get enough Herman guys to play and make up the Herman Cardinals, and they called themselves the Gasconade County All-Stars. But I talked to a guy in Houston area by the name of Gary Wacker, who grew up in Owensville, graduated in 1959. He played with the Rosebud V8s. And he went down there, he hitchhiked down there because they told him to come down and try out for their team. And he wanted to play. Owensville did not have any organized team. They didn't have any little league. Like when I was growing up at Herman, we started the Corey League in about 1952 or 3. And so we had those junior leagues that we played at different levels, age groups. But Owensville didn't have that. So he was 13 years old, and he went down to Rosebud, and he played with them. And he recalls the first game he played, he went down to Old Pacific High School and played Pacific. Not the high school, but the town team. And he says after the game, right down the high school grounds, they broke out the beer. And he was 13, and he just joined them, and he had a beer. He said that was a bad mistake. 13 years old. He drove home, he got car sick, and so he got to the house, he was still looking pretty bad. And they knew his brother knew what was going on. He had an older brother who also was a pretty good athlete. But his mother was pretty furious. She says, if you're going to play baseball, you're not going to drink. And so she put the foot down and said, that's no more of that. So he got sick down there. But the Rosebud team, they had 3 Brandt brothers. And as you know, we're going to get to Bay later. And we're going to talk about Bay because they had the Schulte boys, 5 of those brothers. And Rosebud, when you talked about Rosebud V8s, you knew they had the Brandt boys. And that's how I remember, that's how I put that together. And I always have. But there was 3 of those boys. And I talked to Pug. He lives over in Owensville. And he gave me a lot of information about what they did and about the equipment they used and the teams they played. You know, Cooper Hill isn't in Gasconade County, but it's right over the border. And they played a lot of Gasconade County teams. And they had a team. And Rosebud also traveled to Washington, Jefferson City, and they played teams there. And they played Herman a lot. They played Herman a lot. Maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Just like Bay would play about 5 or 6 times a year. And it seemed like Bay was always playing at Herman's picnics. They had a May picnic, the VFW picnic, the Herman homecoming, and Herman's picnic. And it seemed like Bay was always the team that Herman was playing for those picnics. And I got that pretty much verified from Harold Schulte, that they were playing a lot of those picnics. And so they even, I think, invited Bay to come play in Herman when they broke in their new lights that they installed back in the early 50s. Let's go to the next one here. Gasconade had a team. I didn't really know that. I knew they had a softball team, fast pitch softball, a very good one that might be. But there were 2 guys from Gasconade. There was Ironhead Ussery and Clarence Stooley. They were pretty good baseball players, and they played for Gasconade at one time when they were young. But they didn't have a town team at this time. When they went to a town outside of Orlando, Florida, to a baseball school. I want to bring this in because this is a story that he wanted to share. But they went there for $125. The cost was $125 for a month, 1 month. They got 1 meal a day. This was in Opaka, Florida, I think. And he said when they ran out of money, and then when they were waiting for more money to arrive from their families, all they ate was oranges because they had no more money. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they had some teams. And we can talk right here, since we're in Gasconade. Marvin Rediker and his son Fred is here today. He played a little bit for Gasconade. He was a banker, I believe, in Morrison, and he ended up playing most of his ball over at Morrison, and he was a very good player. So he played on those teams as well. There's another early Gasconade team. Those bats, when you look at the bats in there, some of those things look like wagon tongues. They're so big. I don't know how those guys swung that lumber. They're really big. Now here's the one from the Pershing should have had a little earlier. And that's Jim Held back there, and there was some pops on there, a cordray. Some of those, most of those guys are identified, and that photo, like all the others, are back in the Sunday school room, which you can go back and, they're on exhibit. You can go back and enjoy those after a while. So, Herman had a shoe factory, and they had before it was International Shoe, it was Peter's Shoe Company, and they had a factory team, or they call them industrial teams. And so they had really snazzy looking uniforms. So that shoe factory went from 1904 to 1911, I think, and they had a baseball team that they sponsored. And this is not identified, but we did come across that photo. This is an early Herman team in 1900s. Again, those uniforms look like they're pretty stylish for the day. They have the name in front that go up vertical, so that's pretty sharp. This is before the war. They had a pretty good team, and this was a championship team. This picture appeared in the Herman Advertiser Courier newspaper. The guy down here, we have his baseball glove. That's Milton Wolpe. He played a long time. He was a pitcher. He was a pretty good pitcher. Pretty good sized man. And so we have his ball glove back there. And I think that's pretty neat because I don't know how they would catch a ball now, but if you give those major league players that glove today, they look at you like you're insane. I like this picture. This was the first Herman Cardinals picture after World War II. And these guys went to the service. Most of these guys were World War II veterans. These have all been identified. They're on the back of that photo. And every one of those guys have a bottle of beer in their hand or next to them. And this guy I'm going to go back. This guy right here is about to put one to his mouth. I think that's either Hyde Park Beer or Griesedick Brothers. But it could be Falstaff. Names that went by the wayside. But this was a team in 1946, right? First team after World War II. And this was a 1947 Herman team. And the reason they're standing there is that the team general manager, he wasn't their field manager, although he did manage some early, was the mayor of Herman. His name was R.W. Richard Oxner, or Dick Oxner, he went by. They named the ball field after him in Herman. He had 3 sons who played. Tommy was the oldest. He was an outfielder or first baseman. And Rainey was the catcher. He's a former associate commissioner of Gasconade County from the Northern District. He's on there. I see some Rhineland boys on there. That's in Montgomery County. I think it's Buck Tyson here. There's a George Shilton in here somewhere. This guy on the end is Buck Tyson. He was a big guy. I saw him play fast pitch softball, not baseball, and he was strong. He could really hit a softball. So this is the 47 team, and I want to point out this guy right on the end here. That's an 18-year-old Don Gosen. He's the Hall of Fame. Look at his legs. 6'4" basketball player. They were that year. He graduated in May. This was a summer photo, and he'd graduated. And their basketball team that winter had gone to the state tournament and finished 4th at state when it was one class, and they were 43-7 was their record. And so he pitched for them a while until he went to Moberly Junior College and played basketball there, and then he went to University of Missouri and played there for Sparky Stahl Cup. But that's him right there, big tall kid. And another thing I want to tell you about that team, Dick Oxner, the mayor, he owned the Kaiser Fraser dealership, and he also had the International Harvester tractor dealership, and he took care of that ball diamond. He personally took care of it. If it had some rain or things like that, he would bring the discs out there in a small little Farmall Cub tractor. Those are like really cool to operate. But he had that tractor out there, and with a harrow, and he had a disc, and he would churn up that dirt, and he would dry it, and he would drag it with a looked like a picket fence that he'd drag behind the tractor. And that's how, and he lined the diamond with lime. We call it chalk, but it was actually with lime. And so he did that, and I saw him one time after rain. He wanted to get that ball game in. It might have been a picnic or something, and he threw gasoline all over the dirt infield. It was all skinned infield. There was no grass. It was all, the infields were dirt. And so he threw gasoline all over the infield and lit a match to it, and he burned off that moisture out of there. He just burned it. The whole field was burning with gasoline. And I saw that, so I knew that happened. And there was just smoke everywhere. It looked like the town was on fire. Here's another, I think this might be the umpire in this picture. This is a Morrison team. And the thing about the Morrison team, they, I got some things coming up here I want to talk about later. But the Morrison team, they, back then, like the Herman Bridge wasn't there until 1930, they had to cross bridges to get to a lot of their destinations, to their opponents' fields. And so Morrison would cross the Morrison across the Gasconade River just like Bay did. And I'll tell you a story about Bay here right now. They were going over to, the Schulte boys, they were going over to Fredericksburg, I think, to play baseball. And they went over in a boat. And I'm going to let Harold mention the guy's name who was the guy who operated the boat after a while. But so they went across and they sank the boat. They had too many people in there. And the boat, the back end went down, they sunk, it never came back up. You know how you put the throttle down on your motor? Maybe they had an 8-horse on that little skiff. It was a homemade boat. It wasn't this fancy stuff that we have now. And so they sank the boat. They all got wet. They showed up in wet uniforms. And the Bay guys ended up wearing Fredericksburg uniforms, the ones that got wet, during the game. So they were playing Fredericksburg, and the Bay boys, some of them wore Fredericksburg uniforms. And then, like I said, they used to come to Herman a lot. And the old superintendent of schools was related to the Schulte boys. His name was Louis Krieger. Louis Krieger. They lived about a block away from the ballpark. They would come to town early on Sunday and have dinner with the Kriegers, and then they'd put their uniforms on and walk over to the Herman ballpark. This is a barnstorming team, or a team from Jefferson City called the Mohawks. Morrison played this team pretty much every year for a while there, and they were very good. And you guys all know about these barnstorming teams. I know when I was a kid, Herman played the Birmingham Black Barons, who bought and sold Willie Mays, Hall of Famer. The Kansas City Monarchs, that was Satchel Paige. He took that team all over the country, and he was really the guy who epitomized barnstorming. He had that thing going a long time and did really well with it. They came to Herman one time. But the reason they started these barnstorming teams in the off-season was to supplement their income. These professional baseball players only got paid during the season. They didn't get paid when the season was over. And Herman played some barnstorming, the Cardinals teams. They came in barnstorming in October when the season was over. If they didn't make the playoffs, they were on the road barnstorming. And there were several times that I documented in the Herman paper that the St. Louis Cardinals came to Herman. Well, in about 1920, they came and played, which is now at a field called, which is now Lions Field. It is not the ballpark that Herman has now, nor was it the one that I played on. It's there where Lions Field is now. It floods all the time. The outfield is to that hill, which was looking at Worley's store there. Some of you will remember Worley's stores, some of you won't. But there was a little confectionery or a grocery store there, and they would hit the ball up there and break windows, and he'd certainly have a home run. But Earl Schopfer played on the Cardinals team, the Herman Cardinals team, the year that, in 1920, when the Cardinals came to Herman. And he hit a home run. And he ended up signing with the Cardinals. And he played a very little bit. He just played that one year. He also had a contract for the 1921 season, and he didn't sign because he wanted to marry an Engelbrekt girl from Bay. And the girl's father said, anybody who plays baseball on Sunday, drinks beer, and plays pool is not going to marry my daughter. So he returned his contract and did not play. And another thing, you could farm and make more money than you could in professional baseball back then. They were making about $1,500 a season, as low as $1,500. Ty Cobb, I think I looked, he was up around $10,000. That was astronomical. One of the other guys were making $1,500 a season. And so that was the barnstorming part of those guys having to supplement an income that was pretty meager. Okay, this is what I want to show you. This is the Jefferson City Mohawks. This was a black team that was sponsored by the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and they were often an opponent of Morrison. I don't know if they ever played in Herman. I don't remember them coming to Herman. But obviously, this is in Morrison at their ball field. And I was told that you can see the Assumption Church up there on the hill somewhere. Right back in there is the church. But that is the Mohawks. Now, this is a 1920 ad that was in the paper when the Cardinals came and played the Herman Cardinals. At one time, Herman had, before World War II, Herman had two teams. The Cardinals were there for a long time. But this goes back to 1920. And then before World War II, they also had a team called the Merchants, two-town teams in Herman. Then after the war, they didn't start up the Merchants again. I don't think there was enough guys back. But the Herman Cardinals started in 1946, the year after the war ended. But this was the ad I found. It was in the Herman Advertiser-Courier when Earl Schaffner hit that home run in that game and ended up with a pro contract. That was a very short-lived one. And also, I told you about, baseball was a time to really, enjoy for the fans. And I think the players pretty much got along. Although I heard a lot of guys say they ended up in fights. Well, I'm going to read this one to you. This is pretty cool. Well, I don't know if it's cool, but I found it pretty interesting. It says that the Morrison baseball team went to Rhineland last Sunday to play ball. The trip going over to Rhineland was quite pleasure for the boys, but they were greatly disappointed at the treatment accorded them during the ball game, and especially after the game. The score was tied in the 9th inning 10-10. In the last half of the 10th inning, with the score still a tie, and the locals at bat with 2 men out and the next batter called out on the 3rd strike, the Rhineland boys objected to the umpire's decision and refused to play. Bill Hart, the umpire for Morrison, gave the locals 5 minutes time to play, but they refused to do so, which entitles the Morrison boys to a forfeit game by a score of 9-0. The locals refused to escort the visitors back to the river landing and failed to show the goodwill and friendly spirit always accorded visiting teams, and even ordered them to leave the diamond. However, some of the good citizens of Rhineland offered their services and took the boys back to the river. The disappointment was more keenly felt because the Rhineland boys were treated royally while visiting at Morrison. Now, back in the day, like I said, they didn't have the bridges. They took boats over there, excursions. I know Chamois or Morrison took boats up to, took a boat excursion up to Mocaine and played. I have that right here. And we know about the Bay team going over to Fredericksburg, across the Gasconade River, and got off over there. Got on a boat and went across the rivers. I'm sure Herman played the teams across the river in Rhineland, and Case had a team. I got pictures back there of Case, which is in Warren County. And so this was just shows you that the umpire who started the game was from the visiting team. They didn't have the home team umpire. They had the umpire from the visiting team. And I found this to be quite often happening at these ball games. There was another instance in there where Herman played a game, and they were in Chamois, and they furnished the umpire, and there was a big brouhaha there, and the paper said he retired in that game. He left the field and refused to umpire anymore, so they used a guy from their team then. But Herman was the visiting team, yet their guy was calling balls and strikes. But there was one umpire. There was one umpire. They didn't have him on the bases. They just had one umpire. Now I want to talk about the Bay Bears. This uniform up here came from Carla Kelly. And her dad was Ollie Schulte. And Ollie Schulte wore this uniform it has to go back to the 50s. And then later on, the Bay Bears disbanded for quite a while. And so they didn't have a team maybe 7 or 8 years. And then when they started back up again with a younger generation, Roy Kelly wore this uniform. This was the late 60s now, about 69. He wore this uniform, that was Ollie's. And Roy ended up marrying Ollie's daughter, Carla. So that's pretty interesting. Carla gave me this to display here today. So I thought that was pretty neat, and I thought it needed to be up here for today's program. So there you see stuff. And on the back there's a misspelled word. They have Stoner spelled. You see that up there without the E. It's just S-T-O-N-N-E-R. Mr. Stoner had a business in Union and in Bay, and so he sponsored the team and bought the uniforms. Just like the Rosebud V8s. Waymar Ford sponsored them, and hence the word V8s, the Ford V8. That's what they called themselves for years, and they had nice uniforms. And there's a uniform over in the Gasconade County Historical Society Museum from the Rosebud V8s in Owensville. It's at the museum there. So, this is another interesting story. Melvin Beal pitched for quite a while. I remember him coming to a practice one night in Herman during the week. They had a practice, and he walked in and those guys were talking about Melvin Beal's coming to join us tonight, and he had to be quite a bit older, and he was beyond his prime, but he had really made a name for himself pitching for Pershing and Fredericksburg in his younger years. And so, but interesting here, he's got a Swiss uniform on. And I said, no, Swiss didn't have a team, but I found out they did because I got an email not an email, but I got a Facebook message when I was researching all my history for this program today from Christopher Stockland, who grew up there. His dad lived there, and he said, yeah, there was a team. My dad managed a team in 49 and early 50s. So maybe that's when that was. But Melvin Buell went to Springfield to try out. He got a tryout for the Cardinals at Springfield. And they were, he sent him a letter. I'm going to read you this letter. I've got to find this letter because it's pretty interesting. This is so pale. This is a copy of the original letter, but that was in the old days where those typewriters didn't do so well. But this is the Springfield Baseball Club Incorporated, Springfield Cardinals, Springfield, Missouri, dated April 2nd, 1936. This was spring training, right here. The season hadn't started, and they must have. This was how they were going to fill some of their minor league teams. They had a tryout in Springfield, Missouri. The Cardinals did, and on this letterhead is the president of the Springfield Club, and the vice president was Branch Rickey, who signed Jackie Robinson. The vice president was William G. DeWitt, who's, I think, his grandson now is the president of the Cardinals and owner. Well, he's the owner of the Cardinals. But this was sent to Mr. Melvin C. Buell, Pershing, Missouri. And it says, Dear Sir, you are hereby notified that you are to report to the training camp at Springfield, Missouri on Monday, April 6th. Enclosed, find your bus ticket, Jefferson City to Springfield. Would advise you to take the bus, which leaves Jefferson City at 5:15 p.m. on April the 5th and arrives in Springfield at 9:50 p.m. on the same day. Report to the man in charge of the clubhouse at the ballpark. It says, and be ready to go at 8 a.m. the next morning. And arriving in Springfield, go to Metropolitan Hotel where reservations have been made for you. Your room and your board will be paid by us while you are in camp, and you must get full instruction at the clubhouse where you are to get your meals. So they were going to eat at the clubhouse, no fancy hotel meals. Bring enough money with you to pay your expense back home in case you do not make any of our clubs. I love that. I love that. For in that event, you will have to pay your return expense home. So boy, that was pretty low time stuff there. And now they just wine and dine these players and sign them and give them millions of dollars. It says, bring shoes, glove, 2 baseball undershirts, and a sweater. The training camp will furnish you a baseball shirt, pants, stockings, and a cap. Jefferson City was the nearest point I could find on the bus line to Pershing. Therefore, I made the ticket from Jefferson City to Springfield. You pay your bus fare from Pershing to Jefferson City, and same will be refunded to you by the training camp. I thought that was pretty cool. But what happened to poor Melvin? He had a sore arm, I think, when he went down there. And I think on the second day, he came home, he had a sore arm. And I talked to his son, Dale Beal, who lives at Pershing, and he shared this with me. He gave me this letter from the Cardinals to Melvin Beal. And so that's what happened to Melvin. He went down there and had a sore arm, didn't make it. And he came out, you know, when he came for the Herman Cardinals game back in whenever that was, he pitched a couple of innings against Rosebud on a Sunday afternoon. And after 2 1/3 innings, the paper said he developed a sore arm and came out. And Al Duffner finished. He was a World War II veteran. He was on the Herman Cardinals then. He finished, and Herman scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th and beat Rosebud 5-4. Okay, so that's the end of that. I just wanted to tell you that when I started researching this, it brought back a lot of memories because like I got to play on the Herman Cardinals team at Bay and at Rosebud and places like that. And I found out too that, you know, Stony Hill had a team. We played ball at Stony Hill. Small as that is, they had a team there. And but the seed was planted for this program today when I was researching, I guess, that old Remember When column back 25 years ago when I started at the Herman paper. And I would always get in there and look at 25 years ago, 50, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, and we would put things in there that corresponded to that current week. And it was an interesting column. We got a lot of feedback on it. It was pretty well read. And so that's really what I like to do is research that stuff. So when I did this, when I became a member of the Historical Society 4 years ago, I thought, you know, we do 4 of these speaker series a year as not just a fundraiser for our Historical Society, because we do have 2 buildings. We got an Archives and Record Center in Herman, and we have a museum in Owensville. And so that's why we do these four programs with the speaker series, in addition to some other events we have like the cemetery walks, to help pay the bills at these 2 facilities. So your presence here today is greatly appreciated. But so anyway, when I did this, it was really a lot of fun. I was just jumping every day at this. And I started this probably back in February. I made my first call to Edgar Bray, who was from Bay. Then I talked to, the next phone call was to Edgar's son, Dale. I think Dale's here today. And Edgar told me he never played baseball. He played fast pitch softball, fast pitch and then slow pitch, probably until he was 7 years old. But anyway, it was so much fun to do this and to talk to people and get all that information. And I'm gonna, when I'm done with it, I got another stack of this at home. I'm gonna type all this up and maybe file it down at the Archives and Record Center in Herman, so we can have it with those photos. Now, what we want to do now, I think, is we want to pass that microphone around. I have it. No, Ed Bossler, if you want to say something, and I think I identified most of the people I wanted to, but so many people gave me things for this exhibit in the back here, and you must go back and see that. It's pretty neat. There's a lot of things back there I think you're going to enjoy. And so I want to just kind of pass that mic around. If somebody wants to comment, has a story about the town teams that they were part of when they grew up, was a kid or a player. I know Harold Schulte's here today, and that's really neat. I'm glad Harold's here. I talked with him, and he gave me some really neat stuff. He's living in Lynn, so I think Harold's, what, 81? Harold, please.
No, I'm 83.
83.
I was fortunate to be one of 5 brothers that played. I was the youngest one, and one of my brothers was a pitcher. Now I want you to know that we had everything measured out with the mound, and the barn was the backstop. my brother was starting to pitch. He was very wild. If you were in the batter's box, you didn't dig in. And my father was on us all the time because we had to replace the weatherboards on the front of the barn. But anyway, you mentioned to me that there was one pitcher we had, Dave Cook, that you played with. Dave went on to play at the University of Missouri, I think, and you said something about that he might have been a little more than, the average batter could handle. I got a game, our scorebook back there, where Bay played Herman, and you're on there, and that's probably the game that Dave pitched against you.
I was overmatched. I was 17 years old. Dave was already finished the year at college. He was really good. I can tell you, he threw pretty hard, but he had a really good curveball, and he threw it for strikes. Am I right, Harold? Hey, you don't go to Missouri. Missouri was pretty good. You know, they played in the World Series in '54 when Norm Stewart was a senior. They made it to the World Series under John High Simmons. He was there for 40 years. But Dave Cup pitched for Mizzou under John High Simmons. But go ahead, Harold.
I used to catch Dave a bit, and the only problem I had with him, if you call for an inside pitch, he would not deliver it. He was afraid of hitting the batter. And that was the difference between my brother and him. If I called for an inside pitch, they were ready to bail out because they didn't know where it was going.
Oh, thank you.
And the episode going to Pershing, or Fredericksburg, we'd get on the Urban 6 truck and drive to Brown Shanty, and then Urban Sitzman would take us across the river. Well, he loaded the boat too heavy, and instead of easing up with the motor, he gunned it, and instead of coming up, it went down. And we had two people in the boat, Simon Garber, who was our scorekeeper, and Milton Leesemeyer, who could not swim. And they stayed on the boat, and the rest of us just swam off and swam to the bank. But it was quite a soggy afternoon.
That's tremendous.
Other than that, I'm going to pass it on to the next person.
Well, I want to say real quick, Harold went to the service. Harold went to the University of Missouri.
Yes, but I think when I came back.
But Harold, as soon as he got to the service over in Germany or France, you were looking for baseball tryouts. I understand you were trying out.
They sent me through Morse Code School, and when I got to France, there wasn't one radio on the base. So what do you do with somebody that knows nothing but code? When baseball tryouts started for the Chinon Red Devils, I went and tried out and made the team and played baseball for 2 years. And I keep saying that, well, somebody had to do the hazardous duty.
You know, I want to bring in one more thing before I get. This is the later years of town team baseball, the latter years. After, at least the Herman Cardinals had disbanded, there was no town team in Herman. There was two boys that graduated in 1971 from Herman. It was Doug Stock and Lindsey Gherkin. They were both pitchers. And the manager at that time was a guy by the name of Albert Hayner. He came to Herman and went to a tavern. And Scheidegger owned this West End tavern. And he was told, they got to talking about baseball and about the Mount Sterling Cubs. And he said, I'm needing a couple pitchers. So they had this conversation, and then Mr. Scheidegger called Doug Stock. They were pretty close in age. And so he said, Albert Hayner was in here, and he's looking for two pitchers. And so that started a pipeline for Doug Stock, at least 10 years he pitched for the Mount Sterling Cubs. And Lindsey Gherkin was on that team. They had a three-man staff, Doug told me. The other kid came from St. James. His name was Dwight Stack, who was a pretty good athlete and a pretty good pitcher. And so he played for the Mount Sterling Cubs as well. And he told me one story. He said they were playing Taos one Sunday, and they had a 17-year-old by the name of Tom Hinkey, who was throwing 100 miles an hour. And the first batter of the game was Jeff Shapercutter. He said he tripled, nobody out, leadoff batter. He triples, he's at third base, and they strand him there, and they get beat 1-0. So I wanted to share that story with you. So that's a young Tom Hinkey. And he says Tom Hinkey gets to the major leagues. He went on to pitch at East Central. He got signed by the Cardinals, and picked, not the Cardinals. He pitched for the Cardinals, but he pitched for, I think, Toronto and teams like that, a couple other ones, maybe the Royals. And so he says, I didn't know he couldn't see. He was wearing glasses. And these guys that had faced him, and he was throwing 100 miles an hour. So we're going to pass that mic around here, and we can talk about a 3 minutes here.
You talked about the Owensville Grays. The first accident that I know of that occurred on a town team was the Owensville Grays. They were going to Bland to play. The railroad was new between Owensville and Bland, and someone had placed a spike at the curve there, Route B, on the railroad track. The train derailed. The engineer lost his arm, and the Coleman, I think maybe Coleman died. The train with the passengers in it, though, the car with the passengers in it, did not derail. And so the teams were okay. It was reported in the paper that the Central Hotel did a great lunch business that day while the team got their nerves. But my favorite story about our baseball team at Mount Sterling was my uncle was the director of the Department of Corrections for a long time. So Jeff and I had spent much time inside the prison. And once we started this baseball team and got it going, he encouraged us to come up and play the prisoners inside the main penitentiary there in Jefferson City. Well, Jeff and I had gone to the prison so many times. We'd gotten haircuts there. We'd been to the dentist and everything else because our Uncle Bill was there. And everything always went smooth for us. But the first time that we went into prison, when we walked in and they shut the first door behind us, it wasn't so intimidating. But when they opened the second door and went in and it shut, that got intimidating for our guys. And the third door opened and then it locked. And then we were inside the main yard and there was no getting out. We walked through the main prison, through all of the prisoners, and there were some bad guys in there. Jeff and I knew a couple of them. And there were some really ornery people in there. And we always had two guards that went with us down to where the ball field was in the southeast corner of the prison. You can go in there now; it's a big parking lot now. And the guards gave us two locks, and said, if there's a problem, lock yourself in your dugout. And use these two locks and there's just a chain link enclosure. And we went down, we were always safe then. My last story involves one of the Schulte boys. Marvin played on our team at Mount Sterling at the very end. He was an incredible athlete, as old as he was. How old would he have been in the late 70s, early 80s? Yeah. He was impossible to strike out. But he was an incredible outfielder too. And one time we were playing down at Herman, and I don't know if Jeff remembers this, and a guy hit the ball over the top of over Marvin's head. Marvin was nothing. It was just nothing. You didn't see anything but the back of his uniform. He headed in, and I don't know how in the world that he found the baseball, but somehow or another, impaled in that embankment down there at Herman, he found the baseball. And so when he got back to the dugout, I said, Marvin, how did you find that ball? And he said, do you remember before the game when I warmed up with that game baseball that we were going to use? He said, I left one of them out there in the grass exactly where I knew, because he said, when they hit a ball into that grass, you were never going to find it. And he said, but I knew exactly where that ball was.
A couple more things I want to throw at you guys, and I want some more of you guys to comment. But this is later on, this is like early 60s, there was no more Herman Cardinals. They couldn't get enough guys. They were in St. Louis, they went off to college. They didn't come back home that summer. They had jobs elsewhere, or they had a girlfriend, they were too tired to play on Sunday. And so a guy by the name in Herman, a guy by the name of Rodney Beard, and he told me when I talked to him last week, and another guy by the name of Dale Olszewski, who's deceased now, they started the Gasconade County All-Stars. They went to Owensville and got 3 really good players that I played with. Gary Wackler, who I mentioned earlier, was one of them, and Bobby Nelson and Duncan, and a kid that I remember from Bland, his name was Clayton Reed. He was a big kid, and he was really good. And so he played on the Gasconade County All-Stars. And then we started playing teams like the Jefferson City Redbirds, the Washington Buds, which were pretty good programs. And the Mexico Sports played later on against the Gasconade County All-Stars. And that went on quite a while. Now, that was before the Mount Sterling Cubs that I remember. But that was a good team. The best team I ever played on, the best baseball players I ever played with. When we teamed together and got the Owensville boys and a couple from Bland. And Glenn Brandt was a catcher from Rosebud. He played with us a couple times. So let's pass that mic around and get some more comments from some of our Mr. Schaffner's here. Jim, he's here. Jim's up here. We got both the Schaffner brothers right there. One came from Jefferson City, one from Cape Girardeau. I thought it was cool.
Well, first, let me thank you for a fine presentation. I've learned a lot. And for the rest of you youngsters, I'd like to just comment. Well, I'm 91, so you're all pretty young to me. I want to thank my grandfather for telling his future son-in-law he couldn't marry his daughter because he didn't finish with baseball. He married her, and I've had a successful, wonderful life ever since. So I thank you for that.
That's great.
My name is Dave. I'm Jim's little brother. Now, I always tell everybody this, and it's true. I inherited the good looks and he inherited the money. I wish I could remember the name of the player that was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, and Dad has told me so many times that threw the ball that he hit the home run off of in Herman. And if you could help me remember who would have been the ace pitcher for the Cardinals back in the early 1920s. Anyway, Dad showed me where that ball landed so many times, and I got a picture of my dad back here sitting beside the Model A that he bought. And he said I was one of the few people in Herman, Missouri that had a car. But he said, well, you didn't get paid during the off season. So it was quite a bit different. And the way they picked up their players then, they came barnstar me, and that's where they picked up my dad. They, instead of doing like they do now with scouts and all, they Cardinals, after the season's over, they go around and pick up players by their barnstar. Anyway, it was interesting stories, and this is a wonderful program that you're putting on. I want you to know how much we really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would like to clarify one point. He mentioned that I inherited the money and he got the looks. Let me tell you folks, I didn't inherit any money and I don't know what the heck happened to him.
Well, I get teased about that tall hinky thing I'm Jeff Shaper, I get teased about that tall hinky thing all the time. I also in the game had a bunt single. I was prouder of the bunt single than I was of that triple, which was actually a huge tree out in right field. The bat hit the ball. The tall hinky supplied the speed. The bat hit the ball. We did lose the game, by the way. I think it was 1-0 or 2-1. It was a good game. But the thing I remember about this is the people. I mean, when we started, I have a first scorebook that we kept in 1965, and we played under the name of, in that one year, we played under the name of Gasconade, Pershing, Morrison, and we had our own Gasconade County All-Stars, which was kind of a joke at the time. We lost a lot of the games we played that. But from Pershing, if we were playing in Gasconade, Bill Lockwood was on the team. If we were playing under the Pershing name, Jim Limecoller, Ralph Eicherman, names like that a lot of you guys will recognize. When we played Bay, because Bay had a team, and Roy, I had in that scorebook, I have that scorebook that has all of those names in them. It's great to go back and look at it. But it all started for us back when the Bay team was playing on Sunday afternoon, and that was entertainment. Go to Bay and watch the Bay team play, and the Schulte boys, the Krieger boys, lived next door to us in Mount Sterling, and we went to Bay to watch them play. But still, Doug Stock, Lindsey Gherkin, great. We played under the Mount Sterling name later on, but most of our players, come on. There were 3 or 4 of us that lived in Mount Sterling or close. The Hayner boys, Albert Hayner was our manager, and Leroy's here. Don played with us. Ralph played with us. Daryl Giddinghagen played. It was just great names, great experiences at the time, starting at 15 and playing until we were probably in the 30s.
Probably the last baseball team, town team that played in this county, I think, after the Mount Sterling Cubs. 2 of those guys, I know one of them I talked to, Tom Lemke, they started a team in Owensville called the Owensville Brewers. And they had that for a couple of years, and there was uniforms that like the Milwaukee Brewers. They had a pinstripe on them. And I believe that's the last town team that played this. That might have been 80.
We quit in 80 or 81.
But it was only a couple of years, he said. And that was it.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, these young boys, 19, 18, they're playing on very
But you talk about how important the sport was back at that time. I can remember even before we started playing at Mount Sterling, Milton Niesmeyer and Ivan, my uncle Ivan and Jack Steffen, Cleo Huffman's soon-to-be husband, we'd gather on a field up by Art Schneider's house and play and the community got together and played a softball on a Sunday afternoon. It was just really a different time.
You put your own number on the scoreboard, you had to get buckets of water, and everybody drank on the same dipper. That was the dirtiest water.
And frankly, we would have never played at Mount Sterling if my grandpa hadn't given us some pretty decent crop ground down in the old field where we actually carved down a baseball field and built a set of stands for people to watch from and a brush arbor to protect the fans from the sunlight. So it was a great experience, great time, and I really admire the people who started it way before us.
Yeah, it was a good time, especially those guys in the baseball, town team baseball really jumped in 30s and 40s, run here.
Jim Bottomley is the guy that threw the pitch.
Jim Bottom.
Jim Bottom.
Yeah, I don't know what he's all figured in the part of
This young lady here helped me with it.
I do it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We've got some more comments here from somebody.
Molly Shorty's daughter here.
Holly, Carla's back there, and so is her husband Roy.
Hello, Shockner boys. It's been a while. I was about knee-high to the grass up the last time I saw them, I think. Yeah. But this is awesome. You did a great job. You all did a great job, and start tearing up here. It was great to watch my dad play, and all of his brothers, and all of the community. It was just a great time.
They were great ball players. Everybody knew they were coming to town and tried to fight for Bill. They were really something. They were synonymous with Bay Bears. And it's like the Brand boys at Rosebud. Carla told me the story. She remembered going there for the lady on the concession stand would give her free sodas. Right here.
We didn't like to lose.
But, we carved out a ball diamond everywhere. We played a lot of ball this summer. Gary Wacker was talking about that. Even though Owensville didn't have a team, he said they played wherever they could find a lot. Ball diamonds, a grassy field, church lot, old high school lot. That's how those guys became good. And just like Harold was telling me, anytime they weren't doing anything in the Army, they were throwing a ball. And our arms were strong. We threw a lot of balls. We played a lot of catch. Do you remember that movie, Field of Dreams? That's a great movie. And that guy, they're playing catch. It's a very touching thing. It gives me goosebumps when I see that. They're going to be playing catch. So now I'm 75 years old and I'm playing catch with my grandchildren. So that's really a special thing. But those guys did a lot of catch, play a lot of catch, and that's how they kept their arms strong. They came out of the Army, they were brilliant men, and they were resilient. And those town teams really took off in about 40 40s again, it really took off in 46 up to the 50s. Dave, Herman, those, I guess remember those games. And Herman would go across the river and play Livonia, St. Clement, over by Bowling Green. But I remember the time, my first time here as a 6-year-old bad boy, after the game, those guys did bring out the beer. And I remember the two of the wives bought fried chicken in one of those little picnic baskets. So that I remember. Anybody else want to comment? Yes, sir. Announce yourself.
My name is Larry Von Baron. First of all, Dave Cock, we mentioned him. Dave Cock. I remember him when he played with him.
No, I say he lives right.
Oh, he lives up there, okay. Okay, he was playing for the town team against the Cardinals, and there were some pickup players from Washington, Missouri. Actually, one of the guys from Washington, Missouri, player I worked with for 30 years, but Dave Cook pitched against Nina Slaughter was in town.
Yes.
And he, the first 2 times Nina Slaughter faced him, he struck him out. And so was I. And then the third one, he put on the right field levy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. The other thing about Ray Oxner, I played on the Knights of Columbus Query League team, the first one in town, the first year we started. And the muddy field you talked about, we had a championship game. We had won the league between New Haven and all the local teams around us. And we were supposed to play a championship team from Joe Flint's of Flint Hill or someplace like that. And we went to the field, and it was nothing but looking more like a hog wall than a ball diamond. He came out there with a moldboard plow, and he plowed and turned the entire field totally over. And by that afternoon, we could play ball on it.
Dick Hudson did that many times.
Yeah.
He plowed out. He had a disc out there in the barrel, and I said, how do you ever do this place?
Yeah.
And also, I went up one time, he had 2 piles of sand out there. I said, what are you going to do with that? He plowed that in there to sort of, I guess, to make the field a bit more playable.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he had that all mixed in with the field.
And the other thing is on the Swiss team, I had 2 uncles I know played on that team. Paul Von Baron from Swiss and Delmer Von Baron. Okay. I know I had the honor of being in one of those games. I was probably, knee-high to grasshopper, but I remember Uncle Paul hitting it in the woods. They played behind Collie's store. It was told by my cousin Danny Bull. Some of you may know him. And Uncle Delmer, Uncle Paul hit it in the field, in the woods, and we had to stop, and everybody went out and looked for that ball because I was the only one that had it. But he was quite a pitcher.
Anybody else want to comment? Thank you.
Well, I'm Jane Shaper-Cutter, and I'm married to Jeff, and I thought maybe you'd like to have a female perspective on some of this. We were married in '72, and it didn't take long before I realized that every weekend in the summer was a ball weekend. And we lived in Waynesville. He was in the service, and we would make the trek in, and every Sunday, and Judy and their mother and their dad and I would work the concession stand, and those games would go on. And in '73, we had our daughter, and we would put her in a bassinet and fold those legs under and put that bassinet in the back seat of the car, and off we'd go to the ball game. That's it. She was just laying in a bassinet. There was no car seat, nothing. So we were off to the ball field. So one more story. Fast forward until, and you'll have to help me, because it was a Taos game, I think. Is that where you slid head first? Okay, St. Thomas. Jeff was up to bat. Well, he hit, I think, what was going to be a single, but it was going to be close. And he was headed to first base, and he took a head first slide. And I don't know what happened, but it was close. He was out. But he came over and he sat down to me, and we just were sitting on the hill then. There were no seats or anything. We were sitting on the bank, and he said, where are we? And I said, what do you mean, where are we? And so he had a slight concussion from that. And so we were off and went to the hospital, spent the night in the hospital. But I don't know, did you win that game? No. But anyway, that was just 2 memories.
That was the Osage Baseball League by that time. Most of the teams from Osage County. But some great, Dave Kaiser was a pitcher for that particular team. but the Creedy boys from Westphalia, I mean, so it was by the time we were playing, we were the only team left in this area. We were playing all of teams from Osage County. But I was thinking of Simon Garber, because Simon was a guy that umpired some of our games in his later. He did, believe it or not, he sure did. And the manager of the Bay team was a fellow named Mr. Wolt, as I recall. Mr. Wolt, Albert Hayner for our team, a great fella who just really loved baseball, and his boys had an opportunity to play. We had an opportunity to play because of people that grew up with baseball in an earlier generation.
You came to Herman for a beer and ended up with 2 ball players. 10 years ago, south. Anybody else? Don?
My name's Don Morton, and I never played, but my father did. And this was told to me, so I don't know how true it is or anything else. I'm pretty sure it probably was, though. But he said that the guy told me, he said, your dad used to play ball. I'm trying to figure out what time this was. It must have been around 1918 or 20 or something like that. There must have been some kind of a team because he had a uniform. And after the game, they would go and take their uniforms off and jump in the clay pit and cool off. And they always had some beer to drink too. Now, the problem was, this had to have been when Dad was about 16, 17, 18, something like that. It couldn't have been any much later than that. But anyway, he took his uniform, he was smoking a cigarette, he laid it down on a rock, took his uniform off and threw it on and accidentally threw it on a rock, burned a hole in his uniform, and had a heck of a time telling his mother what happened, how come he got a hole in his uniform. Because he wasn't supposed to be old enough to do that. No.
Smoking and drinking beer. Well, right on the end. Both?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Linger.
I'm David Schlemeyer.
David Schlemeyer. Okay, just a second. We're going to pick this microphone.
Early, you showed a picture of my dad, Bill Beck. Dad always bragged about how when he played ball one season, he struck out only 3 times the whole year. All during the whole season. I don't know how many games they played, but he only struck out 3 times all year.
Well, I love that uniform that we got from Marion. And like I said, I did a lot of researching in those old Herman papers. I did not know that Little Berger had a team. And they were calling themselves the Cubs. How can we get that? Cubbies. Okay, anybody else?
Right over there. I thought Steve Langer.
Okay, Steve Langer. Steve Langer from Herman.
Yeah, I got to play a little bit on Mount Sterling with those guys. I wasn't a regular, but I played with Jeff and Martin. I got to play against Tom Henke up there. But what nobody's talked about here is the fields. I thought, and it seemed like St. Elizabeth or some of those towns you go to, nothing in that town, but boy, the fields were just beautiful. I mean, they would have these nice grass infields that would be manicured. Just very pretty, and they took a lot of pride in other stuff. But, anyway, I just want to say this.
But Doug was telling me that when the Mount Sterling was playing, all those teams over there around Cole County and Osage County, there were so many, there were 2 divisions. Loose Creek, they all had teams. St. Thomas, Bonnets Mill, Taos. They had 2 divisions, and at the end of the year, they had a 3-game playoff. And that took them all the way into October. So they played a lot of baseball games.
Don, I can tell from your presentation that you have a lot of passion for what you've done. And I think something that would be neat is we don't know where a lot of these ball fields are. And I think it would be neat if there was some way that we could do something that maybe they would be able to describe exactly where they were. I mean, obviously, the Herman Field is but there was a field out on Kroll Road.
Kroll Road.
Where's that?
That's at Scott Roofers. Yep.
Okay.
Up that road there.
Well, see, I only remember Bay playing down here on Highway W. Yeah, and, but anyway, I think it would be nice if those places were memorialized or chronicalized or whatever the right word would be, and you'd be the perfect guy to do that, Tom.
Okay, when we're all done here, I know I want Harold Schulte standing by that uniform. We need something to lose there. And anybody who played town team ball can stand up, and we're going to take a photo. And also, I want to tell you, when you guys leave here today, and you're thinking about old town team baseball stuff or memorabilia, and you come across a neighbor or a friend, and you have a discussion with them about this, tell them about if they have any old photos. We can handle those at our museum, and we have an archives and record center that has a lot of old pictures. Some of them are identified, some of them are not, but they're really neat. And don't let those things be destroyed. We have a place to take care of those, and we will accept those. So we want to just invite you guys now to step in the back in there and go to it. There's some really old stuff in there. And some of those ball fields don't look like St. Elizabeth or Taos either. They look like cornfields or...
I grew up hearing all these things.
And Hilda played the organ in the church.
My father is buried